The morning I left the main trail, the air already smelled like rain and pine needles. I'd been hiking for nearly 2 weeks along that long spine of ridges and valleys that cross the northern mountains, legs lean, pack dusted in clay and sweat. My plan had been simple: follow the trail for another 5 days, reach the ranger station by the weekend, and hitch a ride into town. But plans, I've learned, are fragile things out here. A simple hand-scribbled sign at a junction changed mine. Old Fire Lookout, 6 miles. I knew that place. My father and I had camped near it on my very first overnight trip, decades ago. It was where I'd first learned to strike a match and watch fire catch, where I'd watched his silhouette against the sunset and thought he was larger than the mountain itself. He'd been gone 5 years now. I hadn't been back since the funeral. I stood at that sign a long time. My body argued against it. 6 miles meant 12 round trips, steep, off-route, likely overgrown, but my heart said it was time. There was something unfinished there, something I'd left behind when I was too young to name it. So I tightened the straps of my pack, turned off the main trail, and stepped into the hush of the old fire road that led toward the ridge. The path was rougher than I remembered. Ferns grew waist-high, and fallen trees forced me to crawl or climb. The sound of civilization, distant hikers' voices, trekking poles clicking on rock, faded behind me until all that was left was the wind sighing through the pines and the occasional cry of a hawk. Each step seemed to peel away the years, taking me back to that day when my father's laugh bounced off these same hillsides. After an hour, the drizzle started. Not heavy, just enough to bead on my jacket and make the moss glow emerald underfoot. The slope pitched upward, and I leaned into it, feeling the old burn in my thighs, the heartbeat in my ears. It was strange. I wasn't walking toward a place as much as toward a memory, half faded, half alive. When I finally broke through the last stand of spruce, the clearing opened before me. The fire tower still stood, skeletal and rusting, its ladder missing a few rungs, but still reaching into the grey sky. Around it, the forest had reclaimed what it could. Grasses growing through the ashes of the old campfire ring, saplings pushing through cracks in the stones where we once sat cooking beans in a dented pot. I dropped my pack and stood there for a long while, breathing hard, not from the climb, but from the weight of it all. The place hadn't changed much, but I had. I walked the perimeter of the clearing slowly, my boots crunching over damp pine cones and half-buried memories. The fire ring was still there, half collapsed, ringed with blackened stones that had seen 100 small flames. I crouched beside it and ran my hand through the ash, faint, soft, mixed with the grit of sand and soil. That night, with my father, came rushing back, the hiss of bacon in the pan, the glow of firelight catching his face, the way he'd pointed out constellations with the tip of his knife. He'd told me that camping wasn't just about surviving the wilderness, it was about listening to it. I'd been 10, fidgety and impatient, and I remember rolling my eyes. But now, kneeling there, the silence felt like his voice had never left. I set up my small tarp near the same patch of grass where our old canvas tent once stood. The drizzle had stopped, leaving beads of water trembling on every blade. My breath came out in clouds as I unpacked my stove and a small tin cup of coffee grounds. It felt right to make something hot, a small ceremony of sorts. As the water boiled, I could almost hear him humming, some tune from the radio of his youth, half off key, the sound that used to blend with the wind. When the coffee was ready, I lifted the cup toward the tower and whispered a simple, "Cheers, Dad." It sounded foolish and necessary at once. The heat of the drink spread through me, and I sat on the damp earth, staring up at that old tower. It looked smaller now. Time does that. It shrinks the giants of our childhood until they fit neatly into our grown-up understanding. Still, I wanted to climb it one last time. The first few rungs were solid. Higher up, the metal creaked, rust flaking off in reddish smears. My boots slipped once, but I steadied myself, gripping the cold steel with bare hands. Halfway up, I stopped to catch my breath. Below me, the clearing looked tiny, swallowed by endless forest. Above, The clouds parted just enough to spill a thin line of sunlight across the hills. At the top, the view stole my words. Miles of rolling ridges stretched to the horizon, every fold of land painted in late-day gold. I could see the glint of a river far below, the same one we'd followed that first trip. I stood there, with the wind pressing against me, eyes burning, not from the wind, not really. For the first time in years, I let myself feel it all, the loss, the gratitude, the ache of growing older, and somehow, standing in that place where it had all begun, I didn't feel quite so far from him anymore. When I climbed down, dusk was already creeping through the trees, painting the clearing in shades of blue and smoke. The world felt hushed, like it was waiting for something. I gathered what dry twigs I could find and coaxed a fire to life in the old ring, feeding it slowly until a steady flame flickered between the stones. The warmth was welcome, the kind that doesn't just reach your hands but seeps inward. I sat cross-legged beside it, watching the sparks rise into the cooling air. I dug a folded photograph from the inside pocket of my pack. It had been there for years, soft at the edges from sweat and rain. It showed my father and me standing right here, the tower behind us, both of us grinning with campfire smoke in our hair. He had that half-laughing look of his, the one that made everything seem simple. I'd brought it intending to leave it here, but holding it now, I wasn't sure. The thought of the paper fading under another season's rain felt wrong. But so did taking it back down the mountain, like pretending this visit hadn't meant something. Instead, I found a flat rock near the tower's base, brushed away the moss and tucked the photo beneath it. I whispered a few words, not a prayer, not exactly, just a thank you for the lessons that never stopped teaching. For showing me that fear wasn't something to conquer, but to listen to. For teaching me how to build a fire that lasts through the night. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of wet earth and wood smoke down the slope. Somewhere far off, a barred owl called, its echo bending through the trees. I felt small, in the best way. There was a time when I'd come to the woods to escape the noise of life, to prove something, maybe to myself. Now I realized the trail, the solitude, even the ache in my knees. None of it was about escape. It was about returning. When the fire settled into coals, I lay back on my pad, eyes on the patch of sky framed by branches. A single star appeared, then another, and soon the heavens stretched open like a memory too big to hold. I could almost hear his voice again. "Look up, kiddo. There's your map." I smiled into the dark, tears drying on my cheeks before I even noticed them. Tomorrow, I'd have to retrace every hard mile back to the main trail, sore and tired. But for now, the only sound was the quiet pulse of the forest breathing around me, and I felt, for the first time in a long while, that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Morning arrived slow and silver, the mist still caught in the branches like ghostly thread. My little fire had gone cold in the night, leaving only a faint curl of smoke rising from the embers. I sat up stiffly, every joint protesting after yesterday's climb, but the soreness carried a kind of satisfaction. The world was utterly still. No wind, no voices, only the drip of condensation from leaves. I poured the last of my water into the pot and made a thin coffee, sitting cross-legged beside the ashes as the forest woke around me. The climb had taken more out of me than I'd expected. My food supply was thin, barely enough for the trip back to the main trail. And my knees reminded me I wasn't 30 anymore. Still, I wasn't in a hurry to leave. I walked the clearing once more, studying every detail as though I could memorize it. The split pine that leaned like an old friend, the flat rock hiding the photograph, the tower's shadow stretching toward the valley. Everything shimmered slightly under the mist. A small wind moved through, carrying that faint smell of rain again. I thought about how my father had once told me that weather in the mountains is like emotion, changes fast, hits hard, and always leaves something behind. I smiled at that, shouldered my pack, and took one last look before stepping into the tree line. The path down was steeper than I remembered. Dew turned the rocks slick, and a few times I had to grab roots to steady myself. My pack felt heavier, though I'd left nothing behind but a picture. I passed landmarks from my childhood trip, An old stone cairn, a log bridge half rotted away. I paused at each, letting the ghosts of those earlier steps catch up. By late morning, the mist lifted, revealing miles of green ridges rolling beneath a pale sky. I stopped to rest on a sun-warmed boulder, pulling out a small tin of trail mix. From that spot, I could see where the fire tower's peak barely pricked the skyline behind me. It struck me that the detour, the exhaustion, the delay in my route, none of it felt like a setback. It felt necessary, like part of the same long trail I'd been walking my whole life. A hawk circled high above, and for a strange, fleeting moment I imagined it was him, just checking in, making sure I found what I'd come for. The thought made me laugh softly, embarrassed by my own sentimentality, but the feeling stayed. The kind of quiet, enduring warmth that doesn't fade when the laughter does. I tightened the straps of my pack, took a long breath of pine-filled air and started down again, letting the forest close behind me. The sound of the wind through the trees was steady and low, like a voice, humming me onward. By the time I rejoined the main trail, the sun hung low and amber, pouring through the trees in long golden shafts. The detour had cost me a full day, maybe more once I counted the slower pace my sore legs now demanded, but I didn't mind. My pack felt lighter somehow, though it carried the same weight. The rhythm of my boots against the earth sounded different too, less hurried, more in tune with the steady heartbeat of the wilderness around me. I walked until I reached a ridge where the world opened wide. Hills rolled away in soft green waves, and somewhere beyond them lay the path home. I dropped my pack and sat for a long while, just breathing it all in, the scent of pine pitch, the faint sweetness of drying leaves, the buzz of a single late-season cicada. I could feel the echo of that old tower behind me, still standing guard over the valley, still keeping its quiet vigil. The sun sank lower, washing everything in that tender kind of light that makes even the roughest landscape look gentle. I thought of how many times I'd walked trails like this, chasing something I couldn't name, peace, maybe, or clarity. But that little clearing on the ridge had given me what I'd never found on all the miles before it: permission to stop searching. Closure wasn't a moment of revelation, I realised. It was simply standing still long enough to listen to what the silence had to say. I stayed there until the first stars blinked awake. Then, slowly I rose, slung my pack over one shoulder and turned toward camp. The trail ahead was dim, but familiar. The way forward always is, after you've looked back long enough. My steps found their rhythm again, steady and sure, like they used to when I hiked beside him. When I finally made camp that night beside a small creek, I didn't bother with a big fire. Just a few sticks, enough to make a glow. I sat beside it, tracing the embers as they drifted upward, thinking about how life scatters its lessons in small, far-flung places, and how sometimes we have to walk a long way off course to find them again. The night deepened, and the stars gathered close overhead. The wind moved through the trees, whispering soft and low, carrying a sound that might have been water or memory. I pulled my blanket tighter and smiled at the thought that somewhere up on that ridge, a photo was resting beneath a stone, and an old tower still reached toward the sky. And though I was alone by that fire, I didn't feel lonely. Some journeys, I realised, end not in discovery, but in remembering that you were never really lost.